We're now going to create a bar top. Just sort of sketching it out, thinking about it. Doesn't have to be exact. We'll talk about how to bring things in from Rhino a little bit later. What I'm going to do to sort of get us started is set up the views. So we created a plan A1 in our previous video, so go ahead and make that current and close your inactive views up here. And then open up the 3D bar view that we made. So both of those tabs are the only ones open. And we're going to use a shortcut WT for window tile and ZA for zoom all. And that's going to give us two views. You don't necessarily have to work this way all the time, but sometimes, especially in the beginning when you're using Revit, it's nice to have a 2D and a 3D view open. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create a bar across this back wall, but I don't really want this door here anymore, and maybe you want this wall to be solid, and maybe you want to get rid of these guys too, so it's just to sort of clean this wall. This door may be indented, but that's the only thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is come into my 3D view and pick that wall, and you can pick it in either view. Like I could have picked it in here and it will highlight in here, and then I can left click in here and work on it in here. These openings here are not doors. Doors will actually create openings in Revit walls, but this is a profile adjustment that I did to create these openings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the profile of this wall. So when it's selected, you can click on Edit Profile, and I'm going to remove that profile adjustment from that one area. So I'll just pick on this line and delete it, picking on that line, deleting it, picking on that line, deleting it, picking on that line, deleting it, and then using the trim command up here in the modify to come and trim that guy out. So you pick the ends you want to keep, and then I hit my big green check, and that wall becomes solid again in my floor plan. Now I could just delete this wall, right? I can delete that door, and then I can trim that and that, right? So now I kind of have this back area. Maybe I'm going to have like a foot of cabinets at the back, so maybe I want a reference plane there just to let me know where that is. So I'll go to my architecture tab and reference plane, and I'll just draw a horizontal reference plane somewhere in there, and I'll pick the listening dimension and type 1 foot, and it will, it's doing it actually 1 foot to the center of the wall, so that's a little annoying. So let's pick that again. Wish it would give it to the edge, but you can actually select these listening dimensions and pull them. So like if I come in and pick that little blue dot and tap my tab key, it will actually pick the outside of the wall, and I can do that to 1 foot. Right, so now I have that, and then maybe I need a 3 foot working space in there, or however big you think that needs to be. You'll have to think about like clearances and reach and all that kind of stuff. So I'll put in 3 feet. And now I have sort of an aisle, and then maybe I want the bar to sort of arc across here. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and, I don't know, you don't really need to do this, but I'll just draw another reference plane that sort of marks out the spring point of the arc. So at this point I'm kind of ready, and notice that Revit requires a bit of setup, right? So I'm just kind of getting things set up. You don't have to do this, but it does help to know kind of scale wise where you're working. And so what I want to do is I wanted to go to the component now and model in place. You worked in this with the masses a little bit, but if you go to component model in place, instead of mass, you want to pick casework, because that's basically what most millwork and cabinetry and all that kind of stuff is set to. So I'm going to pick casework there and click OK. And I'll name this bar design for right now. And then I just want to sort of create maybe the face of that bar as you walk in. Maybe there's a little hostess station over here, and there's a bar, and it has some, maybe the register, I'm not sure, but we'll create the arc for the top of the bar. So I'm going to go to the extrusion here. And notice that when we go in here, just like before, we're in a sketch mode, so the project tabs go away, and you have this finish and cancel model that you have to check before you get back to the project. But we want to create an extrusion, so I'm going to click on that. Always good to look at like the depth of the extrusion, and how it's working. It's starting at 6 and ending at 0, so you could actually change these, but we'll take a look at sort of what this, maybe this goes to 6 inches, right? And the extrusion start is at 0 and the extrusion end is at 6 inches. So we'll kind of take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the Draw tab, and I'm going to pick the Start End Arc Radius, and I'll just pick at the corner of that wall, and you can draw it out as far as you want. 30-foot bar is pretty big. So we'll go ahead and just pick 30 feet, and then you can pull the bar out, or maybe it even goes in or something like that. But let's say you wanted it to come out a little bit, and if you zoom out, you can actually see the radius of how big that guy is, right? So maybe you want something like a, I don't know, 50-foot radius, right? So I'll just type in 50 before I left, instead of left clicking, and it'll do a little radius there. So I hit escape a couple times to stop that arc command, and then we can offset this guy to the inside, right, for the depth of the bar. And so depends on how big you want your bar, like maybe 2 feet. So I'll go to my offset here, and it's going to offset at 1 foot here. I'm just going to tell it 2 feet. And then if you hover, you will get this sort of offset option, right? And so if I click on that, it gives me that. And then you have two options now. You have to have a closed object. So I can come to the draw line, and I can just draw a line from here to here, to that endpoint to that endpoint, and it will close that end off. And then I need to decide what I want to do here. Do I want to just go straight across, or do I want it to, I could extend it. I could do multiple things, but I do need to close this end of the bar off somehow. So I'll come in here and left click, and maybe use this guy to set the point there. And then it wants to, sometimes you have to get in a little close and left click. And then if I have a closed area and I hit the check, it will extrude it. And you can see, if I look at it here in the floor plan, it's extruding it up 6 inches, right? So it's starting at 0 and it going up to 6. But what we could definitely do is, we don't want our bar on the floor, so we could say, let's start the extrusion at 2'9" and let's end the extrusion at 3 feet. So now that guy basically moves up to a bar level, and you can see it being created. And then the last thing I want to do before we come back and create sort of a base for the bar is put a material parameter on it, so we can control the material from the project before we get out of the family, which we're still in. And to do that, you can put a material parameter on it. So just left click on the select the object, and left click on the gray box, and pick new parameter. And basically we're entering a command string that we can access in the project, and I'll name this Bartop. Okay. You can make it a type or an instance. Right now I'm just going to make it an instance, and we can talk about that definition a little bit later. And I'll click OK, and I'll click OK. Once I'm done with that, I can go to Finish Model, and that shows up. And notice when I pick it, I get an option to apply a material to it. So I'll just bring out the material dialog box by clicking on that box, and maybe we put anodized bronze on it. We'll check the graphics. It's using render appearance for graphics, and it's using anodized aluminum, and we'll click OK. And now if I go to shaded, that guy's a little bit of an aluminum anodized bar top. Alright, so when we come back, we'll do some of the base.